Berlin, the winter of 1943. The capital of the Third Reich lies under a cold shroud of mist, its skies guarded by towering flak guns on rooftops and in parks, ready to tear apart any intruder. Across the city, in theaters, halls, and squares, tens of thousands of Germans gather to commemorate the 10th anniversary of Nazi rule. Adolf Hitler's commanding voice echoes through the loudspeakers, brimming with confidence, declaring to the people, "The skies above Germany remain untouchable." But as the cheers reverberate, another sound begins to creep in. At first, a faint murmur, then the unmistakable growl of twin Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. Yet this is no Junkers, nor a Messerschmitt. German flak gunners scan the clouds in confusion until suddenly, from the gray canopy above, a slender silhouette emerges, streaking across the sky at over 400 miles per hour. This aircraft carries no heavy armor plating, no fortress of defensive guns. Its body is crafted from wood, a material the Germans dismissed as fragile, now hurtling directly into the heart of Berlin. In a flash, bombs tumble from its belly, plunging toward the Berlin radio station. A deafening explosion rips through the capital, flames and smoke engulfing the broadcast tower. Hitler's voice is abruptly silenced mid-speech, the transmission cut off in chaos. The crowd freezes, stunned. A flak gunner gasps, "Was ist das?" And just as swiftly as it came, the wooden aircraft vanishes back into the clouds. Berlin is left in shock, humiliated, and disbelieving. The de Havilland Mosquito, the wooden wonder, had struck at the very heart of Nazi Germany. It was unlike any other bomber of the Second World War. No heavy armor plates shielding the crew, no cumbersome gun turrets weighing it down. The Mosquito was nothing more than a slender frame built from plywood and balsa wood, a material the world dismissed as fragile in the age of mechanized warfare. And yet, that very simplicity became the secret behind the wooden wonder. Hermann. Powered by two legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, the same that gave the Spitfire its wings in the Battle of Britain, the Mosquito could outrun the very fighters the Luftwaffe sent to hunt it down. While the lumbering Heinkel He, 111s and Dornier Do-17s needed squadrons of escorts just to survive, the Mosquito relied on speed instead of guns. And with that speed, it pierced through defenses, struck its target, and vanished before German flak could even adjust. For Nazi Germany, it was nothing short of humiliating. Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, later admitted bitterly, "I turn green with envy. The British can build planes out of wood, while we, with all our steel and aluminum, are powerless against them." In 1940, the shadow of Nazi Germany stretched across Europe. In a matter of months, Hitler's armies had crushed Poland, overrun the Low Countries, and brought mighty France to its knees. Over Britain, Heinkels and Dorniers rained fire on London, Coventry, and Liverpool. The Blitz, a relentless campaign of night bombing, turned entire cities into infernos, sowing fear and despair in every household. Amid the firestorms, Britain faced a grim reality. Its reserves of aluminum and steel were nearly gone. What little metal remained was desperately needed for Spitfires and Hurricanes, the fighters that kept the skies alive. To RAF commanders, the idea of a new bomber, especially one made of wood, sounded like folly. Yet Geoffrey de Havilland refused to think conventionally. He proposed an idea so radical it was dismissed as madness. A wooden aircraft stripped of defensive guns, relying on sheer speed to survive. With a lightweight plywood frame and twin Merlin engines, it could outrun every German fighter, striking in daylight without escorts. Many in the Air Ministry scoffed. Some generals sneered. A bomber without guns is nothing but suicide for its crew. But de Havilland believed that when a nation is cornered, imagination itself becomes the sharpest weapon. Across the Channel, the Luftwaffe stood triumphant. With Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s, they believed the skies were theirs to command. Britain's bombers, Wellingtons and Hamptons, seemed slow, clumsy, and easy prey. To the German High Command, Britain posed no real aerial threat. And yet, in this darkest hour, a child of wood was about to be born, one that would shatter the pride of the Luftwaffe. To understand why the Mosquito stunned Germany, we need only look at the numbers. The aircraft stretched over 40 feet in length, with a wingspan of 54 feet. Yet its entire structure was built from balsa wood and plywood, light yet remarkably strong. Its maximum takeoff weight was barely 10 tons, far less than the lumbering metal bombers of its era. At its heart were two Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, each producing 1,710 horsepower, the same legendary power plant that gave the Spitfire its edge. Coupled with its lightweight wooden frame, the Mosquito could reach speeds of over 415 miles per hour, faster than the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and rivaling the Focke-Wulf FW-190, Germany's premier fighters. It could climb to 37,000 feet and fly over 1,500 miles without refueling. While other bombers required entire squadrons of escort fighters just to survive, the Mosquito often flew alone, confident in its speed. It could carry up to 4,000 pounds of bombs, enough to shatter a city block or cripple a railway bridge. Between 1941 and 1945, nearly 8,000 Mosquitoes were built in Britain, Canada, and Australia, across more than 30 variants. Daylight bombers, night fighters fitted with airborne interception radar, high-speed photo reconnaissance aircraft, and pathfinders guiding massive bomber streams. In every role, it proved the same lesson. Speed and agility could be deadlier than guns. The contrast was stark. A Heinkel He 111 carried 5 or 6 defensive guns, a crew nearly twice as large, and lumbered at just over 250 miles per hour, easy prey for RAF fighters. The Dornier Du 217 was heavier still, clumsy and vulnerable. The Mosquito, with no defensive guns at all, became a nightmare for both the Luftwaffe and Germany's vaunted flak batteries. February 18, 1944. The skies over northern France are shrouded in heavy fog. At a quiet RAF base, young British and Canadian pilots climb into their camouflaged Mosquitoes. Their mission is not to destroy a factory or a railway yard, but to break open a prison. In the Amiens jail, hundreds of French resistance fighters are held captive, many scheduled for execution within days. The order from London is clear. At any cost, the walls must come down to give them a chance at freedom. It is a mission as daring as it is humane. The first Mosquito dives in at treetop level, engines screaming, barely 50 feet above the ground. The pilot releases his bombs, each 500 pounds, striking precisely against the prison wall. The explosions thunder, masonry flies apart, and the thick stone barrier collapses into dust. More Mosquitoes follow, smashing the main gates and guard posts. German troops scatter, firing wildly, but the wooden wonders vanish as quickly as they arrived. In the smoke and chaos, French prisoners pour out into the fields, some weeping with disbelief at their sudden deliverance. One pilot, Bob Iveson, later recalled, We flew so low we could see the German soldiers looking up at us. It was terrifying and yet beautiful, knowing that in those seconds, hundreds of lives could be saved. Operation Jericho entered legend, not only for its audacity and precision, but because it proved a greater truth. The Mosquito was not just a weapon of war, it was a lifeline of hope in the heart of occupied Europe. Berlin, January 30th, 1943. As Hitler's voice thundered across Germany on the 10th anniversary of Nazi rule, the unimaginable happened. The broadcast cut off mid-sentence, silenced by bombs exploding beside the Berlin radio tower. When transmission resumed, civilians whispered in disbelief. How could a wooden plane pierce the skies above our capital? A year later, at Amiens, disbelief turned into humiliation. In just minutes, mosquitoes skimmed the treetops and dropped their bombs with surgical precision, blasting open prison walls over a meter thick. 250 prisoners, many of them leaders of the French resistance, poured into the fields right under German noses. Flak batteries fired over 500 rounds that day, yet not a single mosquito was shot down. Hermann Göring, furious and pale, admitted bitterly, "The British build their planes from wood, and yet we, with all our steel and aluminum, cannot stop them." His words spread through the Luftwaffe like poison, an open confession of impotence. One German officer later recalled, "We raised our guns to the sky, but by the time we fired, it was gone. All that remained was smoke, fire, and our shame." For the Luftwaffe, the Mosquito was no longer just an enemy aircraft. It was a phantom, a wooden ghost that appeared and vanished at will, leaving behind only chaos and doubt at the very heart of the Reich. The Mosquito was more than a weapon of war. It was living proof of the power of imagination in a nation's darkest hour. Born from an idea the Royal Air Force first dismissed, this wooden, gunless bomber became the constant nightmare of the Luftwaffe, spreading fear even over Berlin itself. Operation Jericho was only one chapter. From 1941 to 1945, the Mosquito carried out roles that once required entire fleets of specialized aircraft. Precision daylight bombing, night fighting with AI radar that downed more than 600 enemy planes, high-speed photo reconnaissance missions that brought back images shaping the Normandy invasion. In countless raids, the Mosquito served as the very eyes of Bomber Command, guiding Lancaster bombers to their targets. Strategically, the Mosquito reshaped air warfare. It proved that speed and agility could matter more than armor and guns. It showed that a nation starved of resources, like Britain in 1940, could still outwit its enemy by breaking free of conventional thinking. Its legacy lived on. The concept of a multi-role, versatile aircraft inspired the design philosophy of the jet age, from the F-4 Phantom to the modern multi-role fighters of today. Above all, the Mosquito leaves us with a lesson that echoes through history. The turning points of war are not always written in steel, but in the courage to imagine the impossible. The Mosquito, the wooden wonder, proved that power does not always come from steel and guns. Sometimes, history is changed by a bold idea, by a solution the world once dismissed. It saved thousands of lives, struck fear into the Luftwaffe, and left behind a strategic legacy that endures to this day. But the Mosquito is only one among countless stories lost in the fog of time. Strange weapons, forgotten battles, voices of men and women who should never be forgotten, all still waiting to be uncovered. If you wish to keep exploring these hidden chapters, where ordinary people and impossible inventions reshape the world, then stay with us. This is Oblivion Archive, where history returns to life in ways you've never seen before.